and welcome back to GBN America with me, Patrick Christys, and it's a pleasure to be joined yet again by one of my favourite guests here. It's Ethan Bearman. He's the owner and attorney at the Bearman firm as well. He is also a Democrat, and it's good to talk to a Democrat because there's a heck of a lot going on at the moment as we hurtle head first towards the US presidential election. Republicans have been criticised as holding a quotes-unquote Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. I know the Democrats have been trying to ramp that up, and our beloved friends at the BBC were running a strapline today that had, Trump insists he's not a Nazi, right? And you think, well, do we all have to insist we're not Nazis now? I don't know. Look, when I look at it, I wonder whether or not the Democrats are overusing the Nazi slur. What do you think?
Yeah, so Patrick, it's interesting because I don't like the Nazi allegories. I do prefer terms, though, when there are things that are happening that appear to be fascist in nature. When President Trump's former chief of staff, General Kelly, a highly regarded general, says, "Oh no, he's acting like a fascist. He's a fascist." That I'm okay with language because we understand that fascism is not specific to a nationality or a specific period of time, and we can disagree with how people approach what government should do and how democratic our institutions should be. I don't like Nazi imagery or allegory being used because that demeans actually, I think, what actually happened with the Nazis. I'm Jewish as well. Let's talk about the history of what the Nazis did, not only to my heritage, but what they did to your country as well, Patrick.
Yeah.
And I think we're in agreement that Nazis were god-awful.
Yeah, and I think, for want of a better phrase, kind of in a league of their own, in a way, really, in the things that happened there. I do wonder, though, with this word fascist that's being bandied about, I can't help but notice that we see a lot of like the Antifa type people, or when it comes to, banning things on university campuses, or if somebody talks about wanting to cut illegal immigration, then they are demonised as a racist and far right. If actually the continual use of labelling somebody as a fascist is, in a way, itself a bit fascist.
Well, it can be when it's used as a bludgeon, right? If we're not using it in an objective standard way, which is, hey, if I'm just going to use the example for you. So if Donald Trump is demanding loyalty from anybody that works in the United States federal government, including our nonpartisan bureaucrats, which has been well discussed, and ProPublica just had a great piece about it that came out yesterday, that is a fascist ideology when I demand loyalty from all government employees. That's an objective statement that we can discuss. But when we just use it as a blanket attack, like the Red Scare, oh, you're a socialist or a communist. Well, they might be, but if anything that talks about government support or government help is socialism, we're overusing the term as a Red Scare. Same thing with fascism if we're just applying it blindly. But again, Patrick, if we're talking about the United States rounding up and deporting 10 million people, that immediately heads into fascist territory because only fascist regimes, be they communists, which by the way crosses over into fascism, there's no question the Soviet Union was both communist and fascist and autocratic. We can apply those labels. But when we just use things as political weapons against each other, instead of figuring out what do our countries need to do to stay ahead of Russia, China, Iran, and the threats that are facing
us. One of those things, to be fair, could be argued that it's more radical to allow millions of people to illegally enter your country and then give them better benefits and housing than some of the people who are already in your country, and let them stay there and all of this stuff, and try to ignore some of the crimes that take place and some of the threats. I mean, I spoke to a lady this time last week who was from Aurora, Colorado, who's had to leave because of the Venezuelan gangs there. Yeah, it could be argued that any ideology that allows that to happen is actually much more radical than the ideology that says those people who entered illegally, let's deport them.
Right. It's how we talk about controlling our borders and who's in our countries. I'm very open about this. I think in the United States, both political parties have absolutely abdicated any role in fixing our immigration problem since 1986, I believe, is when Ronald Reagan last passed anything related to immigration. When Democrats are in power, they get a little bit done here and there. When the Republicans are in power, they get a little bit done here and there. Nobody really wants to address. We absolutely, from a national security perspective and constitutional perspective, have the right to control who enters our country and know who comes in. And I believe that we need to ensure that basic standard is met.
What is Kamala Harris's main message at the moment? Because from an outsider's perspective, she seems to be talking a lot to women, and fine, obviously, big demographic of people, great to have the woman vote. I get that, but she also seems to be talking a heck of a lot about abortion. And from what I can gather, Trump wants to bring it back to the states, right? Trump doesn't seem massively extreme on abortion, but if you looked at what Kamala Harris and what a lot of the Democrats are saying, it appears that you would be forgiven, I think, for thinking that Trump wants to ban all of womankind's reproductive rights. And I don't know if that wins you an election, does it? Because I think, firstly, isn't it a bit of a lie? And secondly, is it something that wins you a majority?
Well, that's the hottest question, I think, to ask right now, Patrick. So thank you for bringing that up. There's a couple of parts to that. One is Trump unabashedly in his first term as president, hopefully from my perspective, his only term as president of the United States, unabashedly put three justices on the Supreme Court who everybody knew were going to overturn what we call Roe v. Wade, but it was really Casey. Is the key case. But the idea that women have a right to their own bodies, the allegation is we're going to push it back on individual states. And what has really happened is we have found that pushing it back to the states is way more than that. So states like Texas, where they can pass laws that say all abortions are illegal no matter what, even if you're raped, even if it's incest, even if the woman's life is in danger, abortion is illegal. Secondly, we also have seen from states like Texas that they can now hunt down anyone who may assist a woman to leave the state to go get an abortion in a state where it is legal. This is way beyond just a states' rights issue. And so women are obviously very upset about this. This is a hot topic that's moving a lot of kind of moderate Republican women away from Donald Trump and to Kamala Harris. This is a big deal that women do not have their own free reproductive rights. If the argument had stayed around viability ex utero of the fetus, I think that the Republicans may have had a foot to stand on, but here they're just getting decimated on this.
But is it,
Kansas.
But is there any actual evidence that is 100% where the abortion decision will go if it's taken back to the states, or is it just a fear?
No, we already have laws passed in a number of these Republican states that have absolutely outlawed all abortion and have attempted to stop women leaving their state to go to another state and to criminalize that. Yes, these have actually already happened.
And the fear is that will spread and that will be that will then go, well, potentially nationwide or certainly in vast swathes of the nation. And when it comes to other aspects, taxation, etc., so I'm reading out here what Trump has said about it. So he goes, wants to extend the cuts he enacted in 2017, which are due to expire next year. He wants to simplify the tax code, shave a further percentage point off corporation tax. There's quite a lot here, to be honest, about the economy as well. I mean, can he not just look at American voters and say, do you feel richer or poorer than you did 4 years ago? And if they feel poorer, then they might vote for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be his strongest case to make. And I know he's been making it on the trail. The problem is he doesn't stay focused on that. He digresses into all of these other areas that keep getting him into trouble. I mean, when I believe it's like the Archbishop of Puerto Rico is openly calling for him to apologize. Look, again, we can talk about immigration and issues that have to happen with that, but to demonize the other. Look, I'm talking to somebody who lives in the UK. Europe has a horrific history that caused many, many wars and tons of human suffering. Asia, all across the world, we have a terrible history of demonizing the other, which leads to death and suffering. We can objectively have the conversation of who should be in our countries and who shouldn't, but he can't stay focused on that. He never does, and he never has. He kicked off his campaign in 2015, demonizing Mexicans. He just stuck his foot deep into it again and has not yet apologized even.
Is this because a comedian said something like Puerto Rico was a giant floating island of trash? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, giant pile of garbage in the ocean. Oh, and by the way, right, he said that. And the worst part, though, that does indict the Trump campaign is they edited out one of his other jokes. Allegedly, it's being reported in the Bulwark today that comedian also said an exceedingly offensive statement about Vice President Kamala Harris. They did edit that out, but they did not edit out the comments about Puerto Rico. So the Trump campaign knowingly made decisions that left that in, which does imply that Donald Trump has liability here.
Okay. I mean, does it matter really? Because Trump himself probably won't have looked at all that, will he? And it's a comedian. It's a joke. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, does it really matter?
You know, Patrick, you and I, you're super smart, Patrick. I already know this about you. It's one of the reasons I love talking to you. The key is, from a political standpoint, that is deeply harmful. There are over 5 million Puerto Ricans in the United States, let alone the 3.3 in Puerto Rico, who can't vote in the presidential election. But the over 5 million in the United States can. And
why did
that
they leave?
Can be enough to swing a state.
Why did they leave Puerto Rico?
Generally speaking, because there were more jobs in the mainland of the United States. But they're a territory of the U.S. They're not some strange country.
Yeah. No, I wonder if there was a point there, which was that the mainland US, as it were, was significantly better. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, where are we up to in the opinion poll? Because if I have a look at some of them are doing the whole Trump's going to win by a landslide, and then some of them seem to be saying Kamala Harris is going to win by a landslide. Is it just safer to say that actually at the moment nobody really knows, and yeah, it is going to be kind of box office stuff as the date approaches?
Well, this is the whole thing, right? So we had over 25 million people who have already early voted in the United States. I early voted. It's no longer just about November 5th. And the key in this election, my most basic opinion, is it's all about turnout. And that's why things like that Puerto Rico issue are such a big deal at this time. If that suddenly gets an extra 25,000 people to go up, get out and vote in Pennsylvania, that tips the election. You know, again, the United States has this really weird, archaic system that nobody else picked up, the Electoral College. And so it's not about the popular vote. It's about these specific states. We know California is voting for Kamala Harris. We know that, Mississippi is voting for Donald Trump. These are just done deals. But there's a handful of states where tens of thousands of votes are ultimately going to determine the outcome of this election.
Yeah, I just wonder, just to round things off, I can't help but wonder whether or not people have got a bit of amnesia about the fact that we did have a President Trump for a while, and he didn't he wasn't a Nazi. So, and the world didn't end. There wasn't a nuclear war. The economy didn't crash, and people weren't rounded up en masse and put on planes and sent back places, other than, I imagine a relatively standard level of deportation, etc. So is the angle from the Democrats now that Trump is worse than he was now? In the years that he's had off, he's regrouped, and he's now 10 times worse than the man that we actually saw with our own eyes?
Yes, and I think that there's some evidence that has come out about that, and it's the key is many of his own top officials from his first administration have refused to endorse him. Some of them have openly endorsed Kamala Harris, saying that Donald Trump is a danger. I mean, those were his top picks, his people in his administration that are saying that. That's never happened before, at least in history of the 20th or 21st century. It's possible it happened way before that. But anytime you have dozens of top officials from your own administration saying that he is an actual danger, that's fundamentally different. I mean, again, if we were just discussing policy like it was 10 years ago, I think you would have some really great arguments in your position regarding Donald Trump, but we're not. And we're living in a time when he is demanding loyalty from everybody in the federal government. They took actions at the end of his last administration. I'm involved in a serious lawsuit right now related to that. I'm the plaintiff's attorney. And where we have evidence that points to the fact that they were getting rid of people who were disloyal. And that's,
I mean, if you never look, with respect, I don't want to get too personal about this at all. But I mean, I work in a place here. I'm not in control of everybody here, but I would would expect an element of loyalty from the people that I work with every day. I'm sure you would as well. I mean, and when you say loyalty, I mean, I wouldn't like it if someone was, I don't know, I mean, like I'm trying to think of an example, but leaking stuff out or lying about me in the press. And I imagine you wouldn't like that either. So is that not what Trump's talking about? Because I don't know if that's particularly fascistic or whether that's actually just quite normal.
Well, the difference is a private employer. So you work for a private employer. I'm a private employer. I work for a private employer as well. We absolutely have the rights to want certain things from our employees in the United States, as long as we don't violate some very specific rules around discrimination and religious freedom, et cetera. But the government is not allowed to do that. And that's been the difference. Your top advisors, absolutely, those are your picks. You have control over that as president. But the lower level bureaucrats, of which there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions in the United States, you're not allowed to do that.
Okay, all right. Well, look, thank you very, very much. I do always enjoy our chats, and good luck to you. I'm no doubt I'll be talking to you again in the next week or so. Good luck with everything that goes on over there. It's Ethan Bearman there, owner and attorney at the Bearman firm. Yeah, like I said, good luck, and it is great to see you again, my good man, and I wish you all the very, very best. Okay, so you take care. I'll chat to you soon.
Fantastic, Patrick. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, mate.